Again who weren't here today, so I don't want anyone to fall behind with a doll's house. And then again, if anyone wants to just re-review some of this stuff, they can watch this video and do that. So we've got Act 2, and it begins the same scene. It's just after Nora, has been like, oh my God, like, keep the kids away from me. I'm going to poison the household, because that's what Torvald said happens to people who commit fraud. They poison their households. We have the Christmas tree. Christmas tree is a really important symbol, right? It reflects the idea of like performance, we put it up at Christmas, we decorate it, we make it look all pretty. In the same way that Nora is supposed to be perform, to decorate herself, to look all pretty. But here we've got it stripped of its ornaments, so it's all dishevelled. The dishevelled bride is really, really important symbolism, and this reflects the fact that Nora herself is sort of coming apart. Just like the tree is sort of coming apart, she's beginning to become more anxious, whatever. Also important, perhaps she's just shedding the ornament. She's shedding the performance. She's slowly having her awakening. Also, the Christmas tree, remember, it's Christmas, winter. Christmas signifies the end of something. And then you've just got that idea as well of the juxtaposition between the happiness of Christmas and the reality of what's going on. Nora's cloak and hat. She's alone in the room, walking about uneasily. So we're going to start to see her become more and more and more anxious in this scene. This is the scene where she goes a bit, I hate to use the word because it's so loaded with misogyny, but she's a bit hysterical, right? We'll see that a bit. She drops her cloak. Someone is coming now, goes to the door. No, it's no one, right? So she's so paranoid. The fact that she's saying, changing herself really quickly, pacing back and forward. Of course, no one will come today. Christmas Day, nor tomorrow either, but perhaps she looks out. This imagery really, really, really shows how anxious she is. Again, they're going back and forth with her ideas. No, nothing in the letterbox, quite empty. Obviously, she's waiting for a letter from Krogstad saying she's done the fraud. She's committed fraud. Don't write done the fraud. That's bad grammar. What rubbish. Of course, he can't be earnest about such a thing couldn't happen. I have 3 little children. Nurse carries a big box. Found a box with a fancy dress. So the idea that she's got to dress up and perform, whatever. Thanks, put it on the table. But it's very much in want of mending. It needs to be fixed. Just in the same way maybe that right now Nora needs fixing. Nora's a bit dishevelled, like the tree, like the dress. I should like to cut it into 1,000 pieces, The idea of, there's Freudian ideas here, when we can't create, the need for destruction. It's a really interesting thing to look at. It's kind of linked to the Thanatos and Eros, the death and destruction, death and desire, right? If we can't create, there's your desire. We feel a need to destroy, the destruction, the death. So we have some stuff there. You probably won't get a question about that. You definitely won't have to do Freudian stuff on paper too, so I'm not going to bother too much right now. One idea can easily be put in order. Just, what's going on, bro? So loud outside. Just a little patience. She'll get Miss Lynn to help. What, again, in horrible weather, you'll catch a cold, make yourself ill. Well, what worse can happen? How are the children? Poor little souls are playing with their Christmas presents. But do they ask for me? You see, they are accustomed to have their mother with them. I shall not be able to have so much with them now as I was before. So she's already feeling dejected. You've got the idea of she doesn't want to poison her family here, Torvald has said she will do. So Torvald's put all of this stuff on her because of issues of morality, the pressure of moral standards, belief systems in society really impacting her psychology, perhaps in the same way it does with Blanche as well. Oh well, young children easily get accustomed to anything. Do you think they would forget their mother if she was sent away altogether? Good heavens, went away altogether. So, again, the guilt, the reflection of guilt and stuff like that, asking these kind of questions, sent away altogether, the absolute language that's used there. How could you have the heart to put your own children out amongst strangers? This is important because obviously, as we know later, she is going to leave the children. So she's already reflecting on these ideas. At the moment, she sounds shocked that people would do that. How could you ever? The modality there, the fact that she's asking these questions. But also in her own way, she's like, well, perhaps I'll do it because the nurse has done that. I was obliged to if I wanted to be little Nora's nurse, right? I had to do that. Yes, but how could you be willing to do it? Well, when I was going to get such a good place by it, poor little girl got into trouble, she should be glad to. Besides, that wicked man didn't do a thing for me. again, really important because it's reflective. It's almost like a small version of what's going on here. The nurse's own thing. She left her own kids. She was with a bad husband. That's what's happening to Nora. So this is small elements of foreshadowing here. I suppose your daughter's quite forgotten you. No, indeed, she hasn't. She wrote to me when she was confirmed and when she was married, right? So, oh, okay. Well, maybe I can leave my kids. Putting her arms around her neck. Dear old man, and you were a good mother to me when I was little. Little Nora, poor dear, had no other mother but me. So we've got this idea of absent mothers here anyway. And if my little ones had no other mother, I am sure you would. What nonsense I'm talking. So again, she's already starting to think about it. The dress is dishevelled, the tree is dishevelled. She's beginning to shed these ideas. Perhaps it's the anxiety, but perhaps it's also the liberation as well. You've got the kind of both of those, the duality at play there. Now I'm Marcy will see tomorrow how charming our show looks. So she goes back to like, oh, don't worry, I'm going to go perform. She goes back to herself. Charming. No one at the ball be as charming as you, ma'am. There's gender stuff there. Begins to unpack the box, but she soon pushes it away from it. Fear. Like you've got the anxiety, the fear, all of this imagery showing she's like rejecting these roles. Perhaps she's scared, or perhaps she wants to be liberated. At this point, it's hard to tell, but later, it's definitely she's going to liberate herself. If only I dare go out. If no one would come. If only I could be sure nothing would happen here in the meantime. Stuff and nonsense. No one will come. Only I mustn't think about it. I will brush my muff. That's what you put your hands in to keep your hands warm. What lovely gloves. Oh, there you go. They're gloves. Out of my thoughts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So all of this kind of this stuff here. Out my thoughts. The repetition. The imperative. Get out. Then the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The counting. The screams. All of this stuff really is heightening her bad mental state. So there's lots of stuff we can do to compare to Branch. We could link this to social expectations, morality, gender, just like we do with Blanche. And then again, we've got the lovely gloves, the hiding of the hands. The hands are the things that have committed the fraud, and she's trying to hide them. Someone is coming, makes a movement towards the door. Mrs. Lind, oh, it's you, Christine. There is no one else out here, is there? How good of you to come. I heard you were asking for me. I was passing by. I'll do the voices, so it's not as boring. It's still super boring, but I'll do the voices. As a matter of fact, it is something you can help me with. Let us sit here on the sofa. Look here, tomorrow evening there is to be a fancy dress ball performance at the Sternbergs, who live above us. And Torvald wants me to go as a Neapolitan fisher girl. Important because it relates to, obviously Italy, Naples is Neapolitan, right? Naples in Italy. That's obviously where she took Torvald, so he's got these really fond memories of that. The whole thing that's brought this back is now reminding her of everything. Oh my God, Naples, I'm reminded of it, but also it's the thing Torvald's really fond of, the thing that saved him, the crime she committed, all of this stuff's related. And she must dance the tarantella that I learned in Capri, proper fancy place there near Sorrento. So the tarantella is a dance. I'll come to that later. It's really important symbolism. I see you are going to keep up the character. Yes, Torvald wants me to. Look, here is a dress Torvald had made for me there, but now it's all torn. I haven't any idea. Again, something's broken. We will easily put that right. Women can do it. If only there was some trimming come unsewn here and there, needle and thread. So sewing is actually a really, really important symbol and motif as well. Because when you sew, think about it, you unpick stitching to recreate, and you create these canvases and you put things together, and you're the one who has the agency over where things go, and you're the thing that pushes the thread through. So it's this idea of creation, and maybe she can unpick her stitches of her life and put them back together the way she wants them. So sewing's an important motif. It's also gendered as well, because Torvald makes some snidey comments because he's not a nice person about, sewing's really good, but cross-stitching's for old ladies, and you don't want to be, he's horrible. So you're going to be dressed up tomorrow. Now I'll tell you, I shall come in for a moment and see you in your fine feathers. So we've got the alliterative fine feathers. She's a bird, lots of bird imagery, but I've completely forgotten to thank you for a delightful evening. Get up, crosses the stage. She crosses the threshold. Something's changing. Well, I don't think yesterday was as pleasant as usual. You have ought to come to town a little earlier. Torvald does understand how to make a house dainty and attractive. A bit of irony there because Torvald doesn't do anything; she does everything. But he's obviously the head of the house. And so do you. It seems to me you are not your father's daughter for nothing. But tell me, Dr. Rank, always depressed as he was yesterday. Come to Dr. Rank in a minute. Weird fella. It was very noticeable. I must tell you, he suffers from a very dangerous disease. Now, metaphorically, I think he's like morally corrupted in a way, but he has consumption of the spine. Consumption's tuberculosis. He has tuberculosis, but there's lots of other stuff that suggests he has syphilis as well. But he definitely has consumption of the spine. But if you have a poor spine, if you don't stand up straight, perhaps you're bent. You're not moral, right? Think about that. Like to not have a strong back is to not have strong will, and to have a bent back, to be bent is to be corrupt. Poor creature. Again, they're calling people creatures for not conforming, right? Now, don't really go into detail, Dr. Rank, because it's all very, very lightly alluded to, right? So it's more difficult. You have to make a lot of assumptions and interpretations with this. His father was a horrible man who committed all sorts of excesses, and that's why he's sickly from childhood. Do you understand, right? There's a lot of allusions to the idea, or euphemisms, to the idea that his dad was sleeping around, right? Excesses. He was drinking, he was maybe doing other stuff, he was sleeping around, and that's why his son is sickly from childhood. You've got trauma, generational trauma, you've got absentee fathers, but you've also got the idea of like maybe morality or bad morality is passed down, it's hereditary, like Torvald keeps saying. Dropping his own, but my dearest Nora, how do you know about such things? When you have 3 children, you get visits now and then from married women who know something of medical matters, and they talk to one another. Again, it's very lightly alluded to. It's not obvious. I feel like if you just read it or watched it, you wouldn't necessarily understand this. Like, you would have to reread it several times and really read between the lines to get this stuff. Dr. Rank comes here every day, regularly, because he's in love with you. He's Torvald's most intimate friend, great friend of mine too. He's just like one of the family. But tell me this, is he perfectly sincere? I mean, isn't he the kind of man that is very anxious to make himself agreeable? Not in the least. What makes you think that? When he introduced yesterday, he declared he had often heard my name mentioned in this house. But afterwards, I noticed that your husband hadn't the slightest idea of who I was. How does he know? What she's implying there is what's going on with you two. You obviously talk to Dr. Rank about me, but you don't talk to your husband about me. You seem really close to Dr. Rank. There's hypocrisy, there's dodgy stuff. Even if it's just a bit of little flirting, is it appropriate in the 19th century? Maybe not. This man is not 100% good. That's quite right. Christine Torvald is absurdly fond of me that he wants me absolutely to himself, as he says, because he's controlling. He's not a nice bloke. At first, he used to seem almost jealous if I mentioned the DFO at home. Girl, that's red flag. Run, run. So naturally, I gave up doing so. But I often talk about such things with Dr. Rank because he likes hearing about them. Listen to me, Nora. Like, again, infantilizing language, even from women. So there's a lot of internalized sort of misogyny and stuff. You are still very like a child in many things. And I'm older than you in many... Ugh, God. Cringe. I'm older than you in many ways and have a little more experience. Let me tell you this. You ought to make an end of it with Dr. Rank. What I make an end of 2 things. You talk nonsense about a rich admirer. Yeah, so again, she's basically saying, come on, I know there's something going on between you two. An admirer who doesn't exist, unfortunately. Is it she going on the but what then? Is Dr. Rank a man of means? Has he got money? Yep. And no one to provide for? No one, but, and comes here every day? Yep, I told you so. But how can a well-bred, like kind of animal imagery, be so tactless? We've got this idea of like horses raising things, like raising them for like raising livestock sort of thing. And purity, well-bred, like you got purity, pedigree, whatever, right? I don't understand you at all. Oh God, prevaricate? I don't even know that word. God, every day's a school day, isn't it? Even I learn new words. Do you suppose I don't guess who lent you the £250? Lol, it wasn't him. Are you out your senses? How can you think of such a thing? A friend of ours who comes here every day. Do you realise a horribly painful position that would be? Lots of painful imagery about this stuff. You've got the alliterative sounds there as well. To be doing stuff that's not societally acceptable is often quite painful. So there's hyperbolic, painful imagery, and we'll see more of that. No, certainly not. It would never have entered my head for a moment. Besides, he had no money to lend then, and he came into money afterwards. I think I was lucky for you. No, it would have come into my head to ask Dr. It would never have come into my head to ask him, although I'm quite sure if I asked him. Go, I'll tell you, Nora's really smart. Don't be writing she's weak. I'm quite done with that silly little bike. Yeah, so she's not weak, although I'm quite sure if I asked him, like, she knows how to manipulate this man. You go, girl. But of course you won't. Of course not. I have no reason to think it could possibly be necessary. But I'm quite sure that if I told Dr. Rank, behind your husband's back, and it's your, like, the man of the house, I must make an end of it with the other one, and that will be behind his back too. She's referring to the guy she does owe money to, Krogstad. I must make an end of it with him. Yes, that is what I told you yesterday. A man can put a thing straight like that much easier than a woman. Obviously, gendered stuff there. Very, very basic, quite overt and explicit. You've got the idea of things being straight, things being, like, when we've got the idea of things being bent, maybe they're corrupted, maybe they're, like, not, they're not straight, they're not pure, they're not legitimate, whatever. One's husband, yes, nonsense. When we pay off the bet, when you pay off a debt, you get your bond back, don't you? So they talk about IOU, I think, in your one. So an IOU, literally IOWEUYOU, but shortened to IOU, the letters. I think that's what it says in your book. So you get your piece of paper back that says you owe them money. Yes, as a matter of course. And can tear it into 1,000 pieces and burn it up, the nasty, dirty paper. So we've got the same sort of language, almost like a refrain of tearing things up, getting away, liberation. So like she wants to tear up the money, the IOU, the bond, into 1,000 pieces, burn it up. It's liberating. So when she says that about the dress earlier, we can connect these two things now. Performing for Torvald, putting on that dress, is obviously the opposite of liberating, because tearing things up is a liberating thing. We know that now. Laser sewing down, important. Nora, you are concealing something from me. Something has happened to you. Christine, there's Torvald come home. Do you mind going into the children for the present? Torvald can't bear to see the dressmaking going on. Doesn't like to see how the sausage is made, so to speak, right? He doesn't want to see the femininity being done. He just wants to see the final product. He wants to see the end performance, right? Gathering something. Certainly I'm not going away from here until we've had it out one way or another. Helma comes in. I wanted you so much, Torvald did. Ugh. Was that the dressmaker? Look at the juxtaposition of language here. I have wanted you so much. Was that the dressmaker? That's his response. Yeah, you can analyze that as choice. Torvald's blunt response that ignores her love is able to imply he's a horrible human being, yeah, obviously, but emphasize his apathy, the fact that he just puts her on a pedestal. He wants her to be performative. He doesn't really love her. Blah 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 blah. Now it was Christine. You'll see I shall look quite smart. Wasn't that a happy thought of mine? Now splendid. Oh God. Takes credit for everything, splendid. But don't you think it was nice of me too to do as you wish? I can't even read this sometimes. He proper gross. Nice because you do as your husband wishes. I don't know who's worse. Who do you reckon's worse? Stanley, objectively, horrible, evil human being, does a terrible, terrible thing, does a big, horrible, awful, violent, terrible thing, or Helma, Torvald, who does death by 1,000 cuts, lots of small, tiny cuts that cut away. I don't know which one's worse. They're both gross. Well, you little rogue, patronising, says I'm sure you did not mean it that way. He's chastising her, treating her like a kid. You'll be wanting to try on the dress. So I expect the way we look at the language, you will be wanting to try on the dress. He's not saying you need to do this. He assumes things for her. He takes away her power in the same way his rhetorical questions do sometimes. He makes assumptions on her behaves. I suppose you're going to work. She retorts back. I like that kind of thing. It's a bit passive aggressive. Yes. Look at that. I've just been at the bank. Blah, 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 blah. Is your little squirrel. She performs the role for him to ask you for something very prettily. What then would you do it? I should like to hear what it is first. Your squirrel would run about and do all her tricks if you would be nice and do what she wants. So again, she's performing. She's the squirrel. She'd run about, do tricks for him, perform for him, would be nice and do what she wants. Speak plainly. Again, the juxtaposition, you can even analyse the sound to help create that tone. Your skylark bird would chirp about in every room with a song rising and falling. Well, my skylark does that anyhow. Ugh. I played a fairy and dance for you in the moonlight. Performative, delicate fairy, also imaginative, not real. Dance again, perform. You surely don't mean the request you made this morning. I beg you so earnestly. Have you really the courage? Are you so brave to ask me that question? That's threatening language, right? Yes, you must do as I ask. You must let Krogstad keep his post. My dear Nora, in his post, I've arranged Miss Lynchell had. Yes, but you're awfully kind about that. But you could just as well dismiss him up with clerk. Think about class here. Think about the treatment of the lower classes, the absolute apathy, apathy, and indifference. They don't care about poor people whatsoever. They can ruin their lives. You know, a bit like when we did Parasite. This is simply incredible obstinacy because you chose to give him a thoughtless promise that you would speak for him. I expected to. That isn't the reason, Torvald. It is for your own sake. She interrupts him here. She's quite bold. I like that. This fellow writes in the most scrupulous newspapers. You have told me so yourself. So he gets some part of this. The newspapers, they do the columns, the gossip, right? You've got this idea of like the court of public opinion then. He can do unspeakable harm to your reputation. Again, morality, societal beliefs, society versus the individual. Naturally, you are thinking of your father. Yes, of course. Where are we? All right, cool. Just recall your mind to these malicious creatures. Okay, these people who gossip, these people who are part of and create these rumours and operate in a way that like punishes people publicly, not the law, not the courts, not the police, whatever, but the people who punish publicly, and she calls them malicious creatures. You know, to a degree, ranks like that. Torvald's like that. Even she's a little bit like that at times. How horribly they slandered him to say bad words against him. I believe they would have procured his dismissal if the department had not sent you over to inquire about it and you had not helped him. Right? So it's like almost martyrdom there. There is important difference between your father and me. Your father's reputation as a public official was not above suspicion. Mine is, and I hope it will continue to be as long as I hold my office. So he's like, my reputation is absolutely perfect. Nothing goes against me. No one says a bad thing about me. So if they even made a comment, no one would believe it, unlike your father. So it alludes to maybe her father did some dodgy stuff as well. Lots of hypocrisy, lots of people going against moralities, right? You can never tell what mischief men may contrive. We ought to be so well off, so snug, so happy in our peaceful home and have no cares, you, I and the children. That is why I beg you so earnestly. So, you know, lots of Machiavellian, like behind the scenes control and manipulation. Now, interestingly, she does that. Not in a bad way. I'm also like, I quite like her, but she's a bit manipulative. But she's saying like mischief these men. I think that's quite interesting. You make like this bit here. All of this is in an Exploder quote. So I'm not going to go and do that, but you can just read it. You can pause the video, whatever. You can go look at the Exploder quote. It's on the website, on the Doll's House page. So I'll just fast forward a little bit. Torvald, I don't believe you mean that. Don't you? Why not? Because it's such a narrow-minded way of looking at things. What are you saying? Do you think I'm narrow-minded? No, just the opposite. And it is exactly for that reason. It's because he thinks she's open-minded. She's too open-minded. She's a bit like airheaded. She can't think properly. It's the same thing. You say my point of view is narrow-minded, so I must be narrow-minded. Very well, I must put an end to this, all right? Helen. And he just shuts off the conversation. Now, when we're looking at this again, I do want you to think about, remember, imagine if you were to make Krogstad the protagonist of the play. How would it change the themes about class? Everyone else is against him. These systems, these structures that don't let him rise. The way that these people are so quick to dismiss them, how they're characterised in a villainous way if you make Krogstad the protagonist. Think about how that changes the themes. Just like we talked about when we did Streetcar, when we said, you know, what if Stanley was the protagonist? Just an interesting way to think about reading against the grain. Not necessarily for paper two, but I think it's interesting nonetheless. Settle it, look here, take this letter, go downstairs at once, find a messenger, tell him to deliver it. Basically, he's like, go take this letter, putting a lens at it. Now they're little Miss Obstinate, horrible language. And he sends this letter, Krogstad dismissal. He's like, all right, I'm sacking him now. I ain't got time for this. I'm doing it now. So call her back. There's still time. I'll call her back. Do it for my sake. Do it for the children's sake. Like, obviously, lots of dramatic irony there. We know why she's performing like that. We can analyse the language, her desperation, the repetition, the M dashes, the exclamation marks, like loads of stuff like that. It's too late. My dear Nora, I can forgive the anxiety you're in, although it really is an insult to me. It is indeed. Look at that. I'm the victim here. I'm the victim. You're being hysterical, right? We'll talk about hysteria a little bit more in class. I brought it up before. Comes from the Greek word uterus, because it was originally women acting out of a way that wasn't considered the good housewife. They were like, oh, they're hysterical. Lock them up and do all sorts of things to them. Where are we? But I forgive you nevertheless. I forgive you. I'm in power. I'm God. Yeah, you've done a thing, but I have this power. I forgive you. Because it's such an eloquent witness, your great love for me. And that is as it should be, my own darling Nora. Come what will, you may be sure that I shall have both courage and strength if they be needed. He doesn't, right? When he finds out the truth, he kicks her out. He's horrible. And then when he finds out no one's going to know, he takes her back. What do you mean by that? Everything I say. You will never have to do that. Oh, can we get through this quickly? That's right. We will share it. Nora, as man and wife should. That is how it shall be. Are you content now? There. Not these frightening dove's eyes. The whole thing is only the wildest fancy. It's only a massive dream. I actually think it's the same line used in Streetcar. Now you must go play through the tarantella and practice with your tambourine. I shall go in the inner office and shut the door, and I shall hear nothing of this. You can make as much noise as you please, right? He's just going to lock himself in a way in the man's space in his office. That's important. Set the use of setting. Dr. Rank comes telling where to find me. Nods her, takes his papers, going, shuts the door after him. And all these imagery and like stage directors are shutting the door will have some significance later because he often shuts the door on her. And then at the end, she will shut the door on him. Now I'm going to break this video up into 2 parts because it's boring. So I'll stop this one here and I'll do another video in a minute. So for part 2.